Coming to you live from the basement of an abandoned training facility where we talk about fighting, training, and events. It's the Fight Mixer Show, where you can hear about all the local and world combat sports happenings. Get ready. It's time to gear up and square up because we're going live on the Fight Mixer Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to another edition of Fight Mixer Late Night. You're here, without further ado, you're here with MMA legend, pro wrestling legend, obviously NCAA legend, a legend in so many different factors and so many different categories. The man himself, Dan the Beast Severn. What's going on, brother?
I tell you what, just another beautiful day in the neighborhood. You know, what can you say?
You are actually the first in-studio guest. So what brings you to Florida? What's going on in Florida right now?
Well, basically, I did a tour. When I say did a tour, I had, I think, 4 or 5 seminars set up 4 or 5 months back, kind of at the beginning of summer months, around that May, June time frame. And things went so well that so many other people contacted me and like going, when are you going to be back down again? I said, well, let's just set something up for fall. And so I set on up thinking, well, I'll just pick up maybe another 4 or 5, but I'll be in the state for basically the next 8 days, doing something every single day.
Are you doing seminars, or what exactly are you doing?
Combination of both, seminars and speaking engagements. But when it comes to seminars, I do a number of different things. Like on this basic trip, or tour, I should say, I'd be predominantly anything that involves, say, MMA or submission grappling. I think there's a couple of things that actually involve amateur wrestling. So those are most of the things that are in my wheelhouse, but I'm also, most people don't realize that I actually have a background where I'm involved in law enforcement, corrections, martial, border patrol, and military. Each of these different sectors, they have a ground components to them. And for some of them, I was brought in as a subject matter expert in the very beginning to help them put together the beginning of their ground program. And even, when President Trump was in office, he actually signed in additional monies towards law enforcement for additional training. And only if they were certified ground commanders type programs, and yours truly has one of those certified ground commanders programs.
And you have so much to lend to law enforcement, especially because you're a 5th degree black belt in judo, 4th or 5th degree, 2nd degree black belt in jiu-jitsu, and 2-time All-American in NCAA wrestling, freestyle or Roman Greco wrestling. Correct me on that.
All good enough. Good enough.
Correct.
But it's kind of, when it comes to the various things, like when it comes to the martial arts world, those are all honorary degrees. I always tell people I did take a judo class at Arizona State. My freshman year, I went to college for all the wrong reasons. I was a very successful high school wrestler, and I just wanted to test myself against college elite athletes. And so my freshman year, if you saw all the classes I took, there was no graduation in Dan Severn's future. Everything I took my very first semester was to make me the ultimate wrestler. I took a nutrition class so that I knew that everything that was put into my body, I was going to make me a lean fighting machine. I took a judo class so that I could learn to use my legs like a second pair of arms. I take a weightlifting class so I could design programs specifically for the sport of wrestling. And I mean, literally all of this stuff worked out because my freshman year, I had probably one of the most Cinderella seasons of any true freshman ever. I went 34-0, 24 pins. I set I think, a couple of different NCAA records, and I basically pinned 5 out of the 6 NCAA place finishers that year before a knee injury sidelined me. So here I am, about 18 years of age, and I'm sitting in front of this orthopedic surgeon, and he says basically, "You're done.
Yeah.
You will never wrestle again." He says, "You'll probably never walk right again." So obviously, I defied those odds. I retired him and probably 2 additional orthopedic surgeons, and even the last guy I had. I mean, he's been long retired, but had both my knee X-rays up on his wall right there, and he's pointing to stuff. He goes, "You shouldn't be doing what you're doing." He goes, "You do not have anterior cruciate ligaments." He goes, "You got bone chips, bone spurs, arthritis, advanced arthritis." He points at one spot there. He goes, "Hell, I don't even know what that is right there." And but Doc, look at me. I'm moving in my groove, and I'm kind of dancing around the room and stuff like that. And he's like, "Oh boy," he says, "probably the only thing that's holding you together is your muscular structure." And I'm like, "Hold it right there, Doc. So you're saying that my curse in life is to work out for the rest of my life? I'll take that curse, because most people are so lazy they're not going to work out in the first place."
Crazy. And it goes without saying, too, of how much of a freak of an athlete you really were, because not only in wrestling were you an Olympic in 1984, but you were also a Sambo champion. And remember, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just nerding out here, but a Sambo champion. And you also won a championship in judo before you had to go into UFC in 1994. Is that correct?
Yeah. Okay. Funny part about that, I couldn't have spelled the word Sambo for you at one time. I never took a single class in Sambo. I showed up to the Sambo National Championship. I mean, I weighed in, I showed up. I didn't even own a Sambo gi. I saw another guy, roughly my size. I'm like going, "Hey, buddy, do you mind if I borrow your Sambo jacket for a few matches?" And I ended up winning it by doing a double leg takedown and a technique called the ankle lace. But in the Sambo world, they had never seen the ankle lace. It's a freestyle wrestling technique that I teach to children. But again, that's where I'll say that term mixed martial artists, it really came more about in the I say the early 2000s, around the 2004, 5, 6, right in that region, when Jeff Blatnick was helping the Ultimate Fighting Championships to convert more from the no holds barred to more to the mixed martial arts, so that more states open up and become more acceptable, because it wasn't just barbaric sport. Now you have all these various martial arts elements competing underneath one roof. So, I mean, even Jeff Blatnick had a Greco-Roman wrestling background. I've known Jeff from probably the mid '80s. We were on various teams together. We were at various camps training together. We've actually stepped on the mat and banged heads together in competition. So I've known Jeff for a long time, and it was kind of ironic. We were both back in at a MMA show somewhere back in New York at the time. He was from there, and so we're both sitting out in the audience, and here he is going. He's reminiscing, thinking it's not memory lane. He goes, "Danny, it's hard to believe that. So we've known each other for all these decades." They said, "Sure, we banged heads a few times. We've done this, we've done that." He goes, "Here we are." He goes, "I'm on the outside of the cage. I'm helping them get this thing from going from barbaric to acceptable type of a sport, and here you are still in there doing it." And that was the sad part was it was just 1 month before he passed away of a massive heart attack.
Rest in peace to him. Gabe.
What a loss. Jeff was such a great guy. I got to know Jeff over the years when he was commentating with the WEC. Just an exceptional person. Remember, he would wake up before the show would start, and he would get a group together to get some mat time in. I mean, really just a consummate professional, and just a guy who loved the sport. Like whether it was wrestling, MMA, NHB, like Jeff was a real one. I miss that guy a lot.
I think it kind of made his heart do well because he saw how the sport of wrestling did prevail quite well. But again, you got to look at this the skill sets and what came to the table. Wrestling it teaches you a great deal about body positioning, body control. It doesn't teach you to strike. It doesn't teach you to submit people with submissions. But those two elements of body positioning, body control, and to force someone against their will through principles of leverage.
Right.
Probably a more appropriate word for leverage is leverage equals pain. Or legalized pain I can put you into, the more you're going to be willing to do for me.
Well, I still feel today that wrestling is the medium that is most needed. Well, if you're a striker, you have to put people on the feet, and so you need to have counter wrestling. And the ability of a jiu-jitsu guy now, admittedly, there was a time that you could fight off your back, but that's not as realistic as it once was. Being the top player and being able to dictate where the fight goes is huge.
Yes. I always tell people that where would you rather be? On top, raining down? Or would you rather be on bottom, trying to rain up?
Correct.
Gravity alone, prove gravity that you'd rather be on top, raining down.
100%.
It goes without saying too, because you were one of the first great wrestlers to go into the UFC. Like, you paved the way, and you were way before like Don Fry, Mark the Hammer Coleman, Kevin Randleman. The dominance of wrestling essentially started with you, and all the way to Ultimate 95 when you won your first tournament title. Like, I can't say it enough of how much of an innovator you were. Do you feel that, like, just looking back on your career, that you were the guy to pave the way, that all these great wrestlers, and you opened the floodgates and all these great wrestlers would come in seeing how great you did?
Well, I did not really realize that until, I'll say, a little bit later or through my career. When to educate the folks that are watching right now, I didn't know that the UFC even existed. Because you got to understand, pay-per-views were only being played in major metropolitan areas. So, like in a state like Michigan, where I was living at the time, they might be playing this in the Lansing area. They might be playing it in the Detroit area. But here I live out in little Coldwater, Michigan. I don't know this thing exists. So it wasn't until a friend of mine basically showed me this old VHS tape and said, hey, you ought to think about doing this. And I've seen people being soccer kicked in the face. I've seen teeth flying out. And I'm going, these aren't exactly skill sets that I possess. But then he said, hey, look at this skinny little guy doing jiu-jitsu. Of course, he was referring to Hoist Gracie. And I kept thinking, well, I've already had a little bit of background with some judo and some sambo, stuff like that. I'm thinking, well, a guy could be out there doing his own submission grapple with his gi on and stuff like that. A striker has to be within punching range, arms reach in order to punch me. A kicker's got to be within legs range in order to kick me, knee me, elbow. And I always think my thought pattern was I'll just stay a little bit outside of their range, play the game of bait here right now, and then as they commit to things, I'll get into clinch positions, or I'll jam them up against a cage wall, or I'll take them down. And literally that little thought pattern I had served me very well for a 20-year career.
And did you have any contact with like Dave Schultz or like Kevin Jackson? Because those guys were the Olympic gold medalists, the big Olympians that came for wrestling to UFC. Did they ask your feedback before entering to the UFC?
Yeah, I mean, they're actually they're younger than what I am, but I know everybody talks about. I've actually been on different teams with Dave Schultz at the time. I mean, unfortunately, Dave Schultz is no longer with us. He got shot down as part of a Team DuPont tragedy for Foxcatcher. But I know Kevin Jackson. I know actually a few of his other brothers and that. So I mean, the wrestlers did well. Dave Schultz was just an incredible overall athlete.
Right.
I
meant Mark Schultz. I think I meant Mark Schultz. I'm so sorry about that.
Mark Schultz. The thing about Mark Schultz was Mark Schultz was actually working with, I think it was with Gary Goodrich at the time. Gary Goodrich got hurt, and then literally in this old-fashioned thing where he was like, the second he actually just asked us, he goes, "Can I take his place?" And literally, that's what Mark did. I mean, Mark was a world champion, Olympic champion. I mean, Mark was very credible. But the ironic part was Mark was also a very skilled gymnast.
Right.
Wow, for his size, that's impressive. But I'm sorry, I don't mean to speak to you, but what I think was what Dave was asking was, did any wrestlers come to you because you were the first wrestler to get into MMA or to get into NHB at that time? Did anybody come to you and be like, "Hey, Dan, what is this stuff? You've done this. You've already been involved in it. Can you give us some insight into this world prior to getting into the cage?"
One of the first people was like a Don Fry. For example, Don Fry was one of my wrestlers when I was coaching at Arizona State University. And he actually lived with a couple of my younger brothers. So I knew Don more like a brother. Don just had a little bit of a falling out with the head coach at the time. And basically, Don left Arizona State, went out to Oklahoma, finished out his amateur wrestling career on a collegiate level. But then also he started getting involved in the sport of boxing. So Don actually came back a much more complete competitor than what I was, because he had stand-up ability, but he also had the wrestling ability. But one of the things Don also had, I'll simply just say it, he had this attribute of being, how do I say this nicely, a bonehead. he literally was that guy that there was a couple times where, I mean, as the assistant wrestling coach at ASU, I would be out with the young guys. And so they'd be out there drinking and trying to pick out the ladies and things of that nature. And I'm just making sure that all my chicklets, are all going to make it back home in one piece. And so there'd be a couple of times where people are wanting to fight some of the wrestlers. So as they're heading outside, this was back there in this era where you could actually step outside, thump each other a little bit, and then let bygones be bygones, go back and life goes on. But there was a few times when Don was, in one of those situations where I'm walking out, and now a couple of the other friends of the other girl he's about to fight, they're like, "Oh, dude, you're not going to be jumping in." I go, "Oh, no. Trust me, I don't need to jump in here at all. He will be just fine. I'm just here to make sure none of y'all is going to be jumping in there. He's okay. He's good to go."
You both had the badass mustaches. I would both of you guys in the same group. Hell no. Never.
Ironically, though, I'll say I have a civilized looking mustache. Don's got this bushwhacker, scrub brush there that took right over his face. But the thing that I don't ever remember was, where did this gravel voice come from him? Because he never had that when he was a wrestler at Arizona State. This guy, it's like he always comes up and they go, "What, did your testicles finally drop? And this is the voice that you have here now? What?"
And around this time too, you were talking about how people were saying how violent the UFC was. Around this time too, you also debuted in professional wrestling for the NWA, became a champion there for pro wrestling, and also people don't mention this enough, but you were at the very first Pride FC in Japan, Pride 1. So was the UFC kind of faltering because of state senators banning it? Was that your motivation and incentive to go into Japan and also dabbling into pro wrestling as well?
Well, no, to set the history records straight, my very first profession was professional wrestling. As of the 1992 Olympics, I mean, I had some independent professional companies approaching me in the 80s. But had I turned pro at that point in time, I would have never been able to continue to do amateur wrestling. As of the 1992 Olympics, a new rule came down from the United States Olympic Committee that allowed athletes to be both amateur and professional simultaneously. That's when we had the dream team, like the basketball team, stuff like that. And now we have all these NBA players that are playing it, and now they're just blowing everybody out. So I turned pro at that point so that I could have my cake and eat it too. So I could be a professional wrestler. I always say like a wrestler, and then there's amateur wrestling, there's professional wrestling, So Vince McMahon and the world of hocus and pocus. So, but I say it like that, but at the same token, I always tell people that don't use the word fake. There might be a predetermined outcome. It's a show. These men and women, they're actors or actresses, but they're also incredible athletes because all the things that they're doing incredible athletic maneuvers without the aid of a safety net. And I always tell people that because a lot of times when I travel with two of the most recognizable belts in the world. I travel with one of the UFC belts. I travel with one of the NWA belts. And they all understand what the UFC is, but then when they see NWA wrestling, they're like, "Oh, what's that?" I go, "What?" Just like what you see on television with the WWE or something like that. And like, then they all say the fake stuff. I said, "Well, you understand what this other belt is?" I go, "Why is it that I've been hurt far worse in my professional wrestling days than I have been in all my UFC belts or MMA matches combined?" And actually, that is a fact.
And I remember back in it was the late '90s, and this is what got me to WWE and watching WWF was Mike Tyson getting involved, you getting involved, Ken Shamrock getting involved, and all these great wrestlers, mixed martial arts and boxers turning over to like the WWE. What I noticed too, you also continued fighting. Like, how'd you get involved with Vince McMahon? Going to the WWF, where it was the biggest era, the big MMA boom of the '90s, and also were able to continue your mixed martial arts career.
Yeah, well, it was again that whole era was known as the Attitude Era. WWF was competing against WCW. WCW was basically kicking Vince's butt in the weekly ratings. So they were pushing the envelope. They were pushing the limits of censorship and that. And you had some really over the top characters. I mean, WCW had Goldberg and WWF had Gilbert. Just total opposites of physiques. Where Goldberg was like a invincible monster, and Gilbert went out there and it looked like he had like a dump in his shorts and stuff like this. And Gilbert never won a single match. Where Goldberg destroyed everybody. So I mean, there was some really funny characters taking place. And I think it was probably a real magical time to be involved with it. Me being very new to professional wrestling, I guess I did not realize how much input and or say so I would have in my character or my future. I just know that they used me really well at the beginning, and then all of a sudden, I speculated. I think they were afraid to put a belt or title on me because I had no restrictions. I could wrestle for anybody, including their arch rival WCW. I was still working for the NWA at the time, and literally the NWA wanted to put me under the exclusive contract. I had no exclusive contract with them, so I was working for several different organizations on top of working for the UFC, and then also I was non-exclusive to the UFC, and I was working for any other cage fighting company. So when I tell people that literally sitting here at my desk, sit on the desk right here. I live. This is kind of like I tell people. This is like my Bible. I live out of a planner. I've lived out of a planner since my junior year in high school. Originally, that was for all the amateur wrestling that I was doing, camps that were coming up, clinics that were coming up, because my spring, summer, and fall would be like that. I mean, just give you like an idea. In high school, I played 3 sports. I was football, wrestling, track, and the track coach, he just knew that if there was a Friday or Saturday track meet, but if there was also a Friday or Saturday wrestling meet, he was never going to see me. He knew I came up for the season, really for the cardiovascular training, but then I would always score points from him, whether it was the shot, the discus. I actually ran the high and low hurdles. And ironically, our shot put team was actually so fast that instead of running with a baton, we would run with a 12-pound shot put. And we actually beat some teams while running and traded off a 12-pound shot put and let the next guy run.
Holy crap. Holy shit.
No, it's serious.
Wow.
Again, that was funny.
Unbelievable. And it goes without saying, too, watching you on television, my favorite storyline in WWF, and going back to using you properly, favorite storyline was you, Steve Blackman, Owen Hart, and The Rock. You had some great matches with The Rock, too. I believe it was King of the Ring 1998. I remember watching you do programs with The Rock.
We really had one match with The Rock right there, and that was during that time frame. But there was Steve Blackman, Ken Shamrock, Owen Hart, and myself that kind of get thrown into it. There was time that there was a match at the Hart residence, a dungeon match where it was Owen Hart versus Ken Shamrock. I'm the special guest referee, and then they flip flopped around. Now there's going to be a Lions Den match, and it's Ken Shamrock versus Owen Hart again. I'm the special guest referee, and it just the thing I did like most about doing the dungeon match was this was actually held at the Hart residence. So while the camera crew, lighting crew, sound crew are setting up all of their lights and sound and things of that nature, I actually was upstairs in the living room, and I was talking to Stu Hart, father. And so to be sitting up there for about 3 hours, I mean, some people must have told them a little bit about who I was, and I was going to be coming to their home there soon, because he asked me some very specific questions. And I had a great conversation with him. And it was like a few weeks later that I happened to be at another one of the Monday Night Raws, and Owen came up to me and he goes, "Hey, Dan," because he says, "Here, my dad wanted me to give you this." It was an Owen Hart T-shirt, but it was signed by Stu Hart. He goes, "My dad doesn't have those T-shirts, but he goes, he wanted you to have this." So I thought, well, that was pretty cool.
Awesome. And I'll kick it back to Gabe, and I'm so sorry for nerding out. I warned him beforehand. I would nerd out and ask you a bunch of questions, but
my professional career, I mean, I've enjoyed it for the most part, and I still do a token professional match still to this day. So I enjoy it for what it is, and for some of the people I've had the honor and privilege to work with, because I've stepped in the ring with some really legends of the sport.
Right, and going back to your Wikipedia, also, you were also mentoring guys like Sean Shirk, Quentin Rampage Jackson, Rashad Evans.
Rashad, there's a great story, because Rashad Evans was just a wrestler at Michigan State University when he first came to me, and then he actually had a tournament, so he started coming down training at my training facility in Coldwater, Michigan, and then that's where I think it was King of the Cage or some one of those companies like that. That there's an 8-man tournament taking place, and he was going heavyweight at the time, and he asked me if I'd come out there corner. So I went with him. They had an 8-man tournament taking place. In his first match, he ended up getting his eyebrow cut open, and it was like, oh, he was doing so well. It's too bad he's going to be out. And I'm saying to myself, he'll be back. And I'll just simply say that I put his eyebrow back together. And they're all looking at me like, "How'd you do that?" I go, "Mr. Miyagi." I healed. Yes.
And they all became world champions. Gabe, you have a question?
I mean, I'm just kind of interested in the way your conversation is going. I don't have nearly the knowledge that David does. So I'm
going to say, you don't have to say just the professional wrestling world. There's Dan Severn, the amateur wrestler, Dan Severn, the professional wrestler, there's Dan Severn, the MMA, HAB, NHB competitor, there's Dan Severn, the farm boy.
Yeah, I'm not a pro wrestling guy. I don't know anything about pro wrestling, and I apologize for that.
Don't apologize.
I will say that the first MMA match that I ever watched was UFC 4 when I was 16. A friend of mine invited me over to his house, and I got to watch your match against Hoist, and that was.
Well, again, you probably watched my very first match. I made a very good first match impression.
This is the first. No, so this is the first live. I'd actually watched the videos at Blockbuster, and then I went to my buddy's house to watch on Dish. It was on a dish back in the day. But
Did they have the black box with the dish?
I cannot confirm or deny if he had the black box.
I had more people saying, Dad, I'm sorry that we had the black box here. You didn't get your $14.95. I go, dude, I didn't get that $14.95 anyway.
Yeah, no matter what, you were getting a cut of it no matter what. So I'm more curious about the here and the now. So you're doing these seminars, you're teaching, you're doing law enforcement, you're doing MMA. Is that the course of what you're doing? Because I know that you had a promotion for a while.
Yeah, yes, it is. Okay. I held my old NHB promotion. I also had my old mixed martial arts promotion. Because I always tell people, who knows more about the sport, a financial owner or an actual athlete that has done it? And name me any owners that actually have stepped out there in that cage and done it.
Not very many.
No,
not very few.
You know what? Big John McCarthy and I, we've had many, many conversations over the years. To tell you like a story or two. The first time I ever met Big John was inside the octagon, UFC number 4. He comes out oriented, he starts talking, very authoritative. He's got his shtick down, what he's going with, and then he, at the end of when he gets done, he's like, are there any questions? Just pause for a moment, then he turns to you, then he turns to your corner person to go through a shtick with him. So it's the first time I'm going through this. He hits me at that line. Are there any questions? I can't think of anything. But as he's turning away to talk to my corner person, a goofy little thought comes into my mind, and I simply say, where did all that money go that my parents paid for piano lessons? And he said that he heard it, but when he turned back and looked at me in the face, I had my game face on. So it's kind of like he didn't think it came out of my mouth. Well, 8-man tournament. So I see him for round number 2. He comes up, starts saying the exact same thing. I know it's about to come. He hits with the line. Are there the questions? I go, yes. If you just give me the winning lotto ticket numbers, I wouldn't have to do this. He looks at me dumbfounded like, this is the same crazy cat that said the last little one-liner right there. And, his wife, Elaine, was the travel coordinator. And he's telling his wife that this guy's crazy. He's out to pull off one-liners before this barbaric event takes place. But then they come to get to know me. I go out to dinner with him and the family and stuff like that. And you just know that I'm just a relaxed person. That's part of my character to the point that I've actually carried out a couple of conversations with John while engaging in my match. And there was even one time that, again, one of the matches I had with Ken Shamrock where Ken had a full mount. For 5 or 6 minutes, he had a full mount on top of me, and yet he's not able to generate any damage to me because literally I'm holding on the back of his lat so that the moment that he tries to raise on up, I hold on, I parasite to him, saying that's the tight. So he's almost like doing a push-up, trying to lift me up off the ground, but I say a nice and tight to her, he can't hit me with anything. A glancing blow at the best. And I see Big John's feet that are standing right next to me. And just out of shits and giggles, I pop up from underneath him, look right back up to him. I go, it's a hell of a way to make a buck. And pop right back underneath. And he looks at me like dumbfounded, like, he just can't believe I could be that composed. But it freaked Ken out. And as soon as I realized it freaked him out, I was like, oh, time to reversal. And I reversed him, rained down his crate for 45 seconds, and voila. But there's a lot of athletes don't understand. There's a psychological aspect to the athletic game as well. Most people are good at training a body. This is the greatest tool that they'll ever have. And it's been proven time and time again that you can take equal counterparts of each other. And the more that you can put them in this classroom and they meditate and they study and they make themselves believe in their thought, they're as successful, if not more successful. And I will tell people that when you look at a career like what I had, I think what is it? There's only 5 people that have over 100 cage fights, and I'm one of them. There's only 4 people that have over 100 victories. I'm one of those. And the ironic part is I faced the other 3. I beat the other 3, and the closest one to my age years my junior. So I always tell people I started a cage fight career at 37. I went for 20 years. I go, I'm lifetime chemical free. But the real kicker is I did 2 training in a 20-year career. Now, when you look at a lot of these guys, they're taking, 4 to 6 months or more into a training camp. And I did one for 32 days, UFC number 5, and 35 days for the Ultimate Open. That's it.
Yeah. And you and going back to your legendary career, you retired in 2012, 2013, went to the UFC Hall of Fame at UFC 52, I believe. If you look at the athletes now, and you brought up an important topic where it's all about the mental. The game has strayed towards trash talking, getting to your opponent's head. What are your thoughts about the current MMA product? And if you were running the show, what would you do different?
I'm not a fan of the trash talk, especially. I mean, there's one thing. It's one thing to get a rise out of someone if you can do it a little bit more intellectually, but to sit out there just simply drop F-bomb after F-bomb, no. I mean, to me, even in my own gym, I have a pocket thesaurus I keep up on the shelf. After I hear one of my young competitors, trainees, drop a couple too many F-bombs, I go grab it and I slam it on their chest, and I go, find me another word that means the exact same thing. I go, you'd be surprised. You actually can curse in public, and people will think you're educated if you simply use a multi-syllable word. It may not have the same zing-a-ding-ding-ding that little 4-letter word there has, but people will look at you a little bit differently. So I just thought, the Conor McGregors and the few other people, the way that they drop F-bombs, and you got these, goofball matches that they're doing with these boxing events, and, MMA guys want to be boxers and things of that nature. I go, understand what your wheelhouse. I've had people reach out to me, damn, would you do a boxing match? Nope. It's not my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Also, I don't need the money that bad. So
exactly,
there are a lot of these guys that are doing it because they need the money, or they know that it'll be a money match. So
it's always.
We were talking about professional wrestling. I always tell people I would still be working for Vince McMahon, and that if money meant that much to me in the first place, because they, as a professional wrestler, they change your character. You might be a baby face good guy. You might they turn you into heel, the bad guy, or they take you from singles matches to tag team matches, and vice versa. It's just all kinds of things that you can do. Well, I was thinking they used me as Dan Severn, the Beast from Ultimate Fighting Championships. Well, okay, now they want to go into they wanted me to put 666 across my forehead. Mark of the Beast. Want to take me to an Undertaker disciple, stuff like this. And as they're talking to me, I put my hands like a T, and I'm going, not going to happen, guys.
Not going to happen.
I don't need money that bad, and I turned it down. And even Vince said, he goes, you know how much money you can make doing this? I go, Vince, you don't understand why I'm here. Even the UFC ought to be sending royalty checks, because look how much notoriety both Ken Shamrock and I got for that company. That company had hundreds of people watching it, not the thousands of people that watch it now. It was between going into professional wrestling that we gave them so much more exposure. But now you're still seeing, even fast forward to today, there's a lot of MMA guys that they know that I can extend my career now in professional wrestling.
Right.
And it's not going to be that hard on my body.
And to your point also, I remember your rivalry with Ken Shamrock in the WWE. I remember your storyline in the WWE, and you barely even talked. You sold that tough guy character. You sold yourself. And that's how guys like me from the Attitude Era actually remember that storyline, remember you. Yeah. And back to your topic with Ken Shamrock, it was one of the highest selling pay-per-views back in the MMA days before Zuffa took over. It was a high buy rate when you fought Ken Shamrock. Do you think with MMA fighters nowadays, like the Conor McGregor, the Jake Pauls of the world, do you think it's a lack of creativity to sell yourself beyond the trash talking, or what do you think is the biggest problem, or the biggest thing that MMA fighters need to overcome in order to reach people and promote themselves without all the hoopla, without the trash talking and all that stuff?
Yeah, I really don't know. I probably really haven't spent that much time really to think about it there. But for example, I'll go back in time and pull out another athlete like a George St. Pierre. I always liked the way that George St. Pierre, how he conducted himself. He conducted himself with class, good interviews, didn't get into any trash talking. I mean, he knew that one of the holes in his game was his ground game, but he studied it so hard. He studied the sport of wrestling so hard that literally he could have easily been on the Canadian Olympic wrestling team. And that speaks volumes for what he put into it. I've never met George Pierre, but from everything that I saw on the internet or what I saw in live matches, I like how he portrayed himself. Again, a lot of the newer viewers, they're not going to know who he is because only in the United States we are a very forgetful society in so many different ways. I could go to other countries and they will regale me as a god. And any side of the United States kind of going, who? Yeah. So it's but that's America. I mean, but again, 9/11 took place, and people think that was a storybook fable. I mean, I hate to say it like that, but that is the thing about America, that they are so forgetful for what has happened.
I still think I think GSP actually still has market value. But I definitely agree with you that as far as personality wise, I think he held the pinnacle of how a martial artist should be. Honorable and respectful.
People wore a judo gi and a belt. So he definitely was exemplifying the fact that he was a martial artist. Yes,
absolutely.
Because I've seen both. I've seen people that are from the martial arts world that claim to be, but they're more of a street than they were of a martial arts category. So you could see people from both sectors that they might have came up with all this proper stuff like this, but they're pretty rogue. And then there's other people that came from the streets that actually more refined than their alter egos.
Right. Gotcha.
There was times when I was actually using some of the aspects of professional wrestling even in some of my MMA matches, because even I think it was at the Ultimate where I had all my crew. We were all dressed out in stars and stripes uniforms, and they had T-shirts knotted up in their trunks, and then there were 4 guys that were surrounding me. And then there's one gentleman that was behind me. That was Dennis Carluzzo. He actually was carrying the NWA belt. I actually had to get clearance through the UFC to have a professional wrestling belt carried out to the octagon. And again, that was for UFC number 5. And I even told my guys, I said, you guys are the show. I go, I have one mission tonight. I've got to go out there and I got to win this evening. I said, don't let no one touch me. I said, I got to concentrate. I said, you guys do the show, you do all your stuff. I go, when the tournament's done, we celebrate that. And so they did their job. I did my job. And then inside the cage, I'm the first, and I still think the guy there hold up a professional wrestling belt with the courtesy UFC title belt.
And I remember you carrying that with Jim Cornette out to all the belts that you had in such a storied career. Why not? But Jim
Cornette was very instrumental on a couple of different occasions there with me. I mean, first off, he was running his own promotion known as Smoky Mountain Wrestling.
Yes,
he had his champion Chris Candido at the time. I don't think Jim knew who I was at all, because I was still an unknown. I was only doing just a few matches on the independent scene, period, before I started going to Japan. I was working with the UWFI organization. And so that wouldn't have been on the radar of anything inside the United States. And then I think Dennis Carluzzo was the gentleman that called him up and said, hey, pitched this idea for Jim to say yes and move ahead. But Jim, I mean, when you start talking professional wrestling to him, he is so passionate about that form of entertainment that you could see the child that fell in love with professional wrestling decades ago. You can see it emerge. He wants to push a product so good that you want to believe in that product. That's where I mean, when I was there, he just butted heads with Russo and the creative team. He would come out to me and he just grabbed me by the shoulders and said, he says, I can't say all the adjectives, verbs, and adverbs that he would come up with. But he's like, and he goes, this creative team doesn't have a clue as to what to do with you. He says, you're the greatest thing to ever hit professional wrestling. You're a wrestler who can wrestle. He said, you don't say nothing. He goes, just go out there and tie people in knots and just destroy them. And literally, this was before there ever was a Bill Goldberg. So WWF did miss that opportunity that they could have turned me. And then now on the counterpart of this, I ended up meeting Bill Goldberg. Then I'll say maybe like a year or two after the fact, where I'm out in LA. I meet him and a couple other businessmen at a business luncheon. And as we're talking, they're getting to know each other, stuff like that. He kind of reaches over the table, just nudges me on the shoulder, and says, "Hey, thanks." I go, "For what?" I said, "Dude," he says, "I was you." He said, "I watched you in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. I see you raise your hands, do that crazy eye look on your face, stuff like that." He says, "I just portrayed you and some of that stuff." And ironically, it turned out his move, the spear, was a move that one of my other buddies taught him, the double leg takedown. So it's just kind of ironic and full circle that there's so many people that we actually had a common ground that I didn't know was working with him at the time. So, but he paid me a nice compliment.
Awesome. And what was your? I'll ask one more question and take it back to Gabe. But what was your favorite fight? Because I talked to like Forrest Griffin. I remember back in like 2013, I asked him about because Forrest Griffin's first fight was against you, and you beat Forrest Griffin. He didn't remember this, but you actually fought Forrest Griffin in IFC. What was? There's so many fights that you had, over 100 victories. Who was your favorite MMA opponent?
The funny part about that, when I was asked about, so how was it fighting Forrest? I go, Forrest? I fought Forrest? And then guys looking at me thinking that maybe I'm a little punch drunk, that I'm taking 1 too many shots to the head. And I'm thinking, well, I said, I probably beat him because I don't remember him. I said, ask me about the losses. I remember all of those. I know exactly at what point I lost the match, whether it was a mental letdown, a strategy type letdown. Ask me about those. But it was, I mean, again, nothing against Forrest, because ironically, I've been to the UFC office a number of times, and that Forrest has greeted me every time. Has been very, very much a gentleman and stuff like that. So I get along great with Forrest. I mean, but at the same token, I never had any animosity against any of these guys. I didn't have to conjure up a hatred. I mean, it's like in a sport of wrestling, I can shake hands with you before, I'll shake hands with you after. No hard feelings what's going to happen over the course of the next 6 minutes, 8 minutes, or 9 minutes in a freestyle or Greco-Roman type of match. And that's the same way I looked at it. I mean, truth really be known, the only one opponent I ever had that had any kind of animosity against would have been a Tank Abbott, because I watched him knock a 40-pound sumo. I see the man lay there convulsing, and I see him strike him again while he laid there defenseless. I'm thinking, oh, I couldn't believe he did something like that. And I simply just, in my mind, I'm like, if I could have you in a cage, I said, evil will be a greater evil. I could conjure up stuff like, oh, you can't even think of. That might be true.
Favorite opponent? I remember your fight with Oleg Turkenhoff.
Again, I wouldn't call that a favorite fight, though. Okay, I can't come up with nothing to say about a favorite fight, but I mean, at that point in time, I'd been to Russia on a number of different occasions during my amateur wrestling career. The Russians were the number one most skilled athletes when it came to the sport of wrestling. They were just so technically strong. Their only cheek in their armor was cardiovascular. So you had to take them into deep water. What I mean by deep water, you had to take them far into this match. So matches, when I first began, were like 9 minutes long, 3-minute periods, knowing that I'm going to be losing in round 1. I'm going to be losing in round 2. Maybe by round 3, I might start to score some points, and then hopefully we can turn this whole match on over. So I mean, that I knew about the Russian mentality. So going up against Oleg, all I know is that I got a guy from Gorky Park, Russia, and he's a sambo practitioner, and I forget what they said that his record was. I simply knew I was up against someone that is not going to stop. I simply knew that I am going to have to half kill a man to beat him. And literally, I did do just exactly that, half kill a man in order to beat him. Because of the first match, in UFC number 5, I was dropping knees on his forehead. But if you ever go back and watch that match, you'll see 3 distinct times I stopped. I look up at Big John like, why is this match even continuing? So much blood was flowing off his forehead. his 2 eye wells were filled. He couldn't see me. I could drop knees at random, and he would have never seen them coming on in. And even at one point, he turned his head sideways to let the blood run out of Porto's eye, Porto's nose, exposing the temple. It didn't cross my mind, drop a knee now. It's that temple. I'm thinking, but it might kill him. I want to win, but I don't want to win at this cost. There's a lot of guys that will never understand how nicely I took it on them. The only person that ever abused was take at it. I actually been another. I'll get one other match. I go up against another match down in Kentucky here at some point in time. I got this big old hoss, 300, I don't know, 320, something like that. He'd been a tough man, finalist, something like that. Big old horse. Yeah.
Was his name Bobish by chance? Bobish something, was he?
No, that's somebody else. Dan Bobish? Yeah, no,
I think so.
Yeah, Dan Bobish, he was from Ohio. That was a different person. But,
okay.
I was like, Dan Bobish is still alive. Again, I don't know. I haven't heard that name in a while. But, I've done it down in Kentucky. I mean, the guy's name will eventually come to me, but he wanted to fight me. And round number one, basically, I was never known for my stand-up ability, so he throws a big old haymaker, something like this, but then just grab him and basically jammed him in against the cage. And as I got jammed up cage, I never had anyone just manhandle me like this. He actually grabs me and just picks me up and just swings me back up against the cage. Well, as I hit the cage, he throws me to like the middle section of the cage. It's like a trampoline. I hit and I come right back out. So as I come right back out, I break my knee up and I hit a right in the stomach right there. It just knocks the wind out of me. So literally, as I hit him with the knee, he lowers me down to the mat, and then literally, as soon as my feet touch, I throw a lateral drop, and I throw him right out in the dead center of the cage, and I have a crucifix position on him. And literally, I got my legs wrapped around one arm, I got a key lock in the other arm, and I raise my fist up, and I just look up at the referee like, checkmate. Done.
Yeah.
Okay, referee doesn't stop the match, so I'm just going like, Hey, just little ones, and now even Eddie. His first name is Eddie, but it's not going to come to me. But my opponent now just yells out, "Is that as hard as you can hit me, Dan?" I'm thinking. So I go from pink. I go thunk. No, but why? It was checkmate, and that's where mixed martial arts, NHB, has not been around that long. We don't know the long-term effects of what it's going to cause to some of these athletes. Alzheimer's, dementia. It's already happening to a number of these athletes already.
Yeah.
You could be a boxer, you could be an MMA guy that wears even a head kick to where no, you're not getting the lacerations, you're not sticking to those things that nature, but you're still that gray matter. Each time it gets hit, it's being sloshed. It's sloshed. It's sloshed. It's going to slosh so many times before we got to scoop the guys upstairs. Maybe it's because I only did a couple of training camps that I didn't take the punishment that I did. And I was going to think about time will tell as more and more time passes, but I'm seeing more and more athletes that are taking issues mentally, physically, and I'm like, well, hopefully I dodge the bullet. Time will tell.
Cool. Gabe, you have a question?
Yeah, Dan, are you happy?
I'm living the time of my life.
Yeah.
I'll say, I love what I do. I love traveling. The fact that I'm down in Florida, I'll be here down in Florida for till this coming Monday night. I'll finish up my last seminar. Then I got to dash right back to Michigan because I got to close up my summer cottage. I got a few more things I got to do there. Then literally this past year, I have lived the lifestyle of a snowbird. So, same shorts and t-shirts that I'm wearing in Michigan right now. Well, it's spring, summer, and it's fall because start to cool down in the evenings. I'll be headed back up to Arizona, so I'll still be out in the sun and the fun. So I enjoy what I carved out for myself.
Good.
You're a legend in MMA. You're a legend in pro wrestling. So we're going to wrap up this show like a Christmas present. But any place that we can find you on Instagram, social media, Facebook, your seminars, when's your next seminar, so we can tell people to pay a
I'll
visit.
just say that, I mean, just go to the website at dansevern.com. All my social media outlets are there, and there's an email address. I always tell people, respond to me by email, because all the other, when you look at Facebook messages and you look at all these other types of social media outlets, I'm a dinosaur. I'm not great with the social media type stuff. I do respond to almost all of the questions eventually. The key word there is eventually. So, I mean, it's even on this road trip here right now, I'm trying to, I started, I had a little bit of problems there between the COVID and having a computer meltdown, trying to get a replacement computer during all this COVID of shortages of everything from toilet paper to computers. And, so I'm still, just a couple weeks ago, I was still 500 emails behind. Now, when it comes to Facebook messages or others, I'm probably a couple thousand messages behind. So will they get answered? Oh, eventually. Keyword again, eventually. Because I do that myself, because nobody else can really do that for me. I've always been said, well, can't you get an assistant? I go, well, the assistant's going to have to ask me these questions. It's easier for you to just grab the keyboard and bang it out. So
awesome. So we're going to wrap up this show, the Sunday edition of the Fight Mixer. Gabe, any final thoughts, sir, to my co-host, Gabe?
I'm sure there's plenty more that we could go into, and I appreciate your time, Dan.
Gabe, I appreciate you guys having me on here.
It's probably late there in Florida. I'm here on the West Coast, and it's 8:30.
You got 3 hours difference. You'd be surprised. The beast gets up mighty early in the morning, and I burn it pretty late at night, because as successful as I like to have been in the cage, I still want to be just as successful in the business sector.
All right, my man. That's what I like to hear. All right. Well, thanks for your time. Have a good night.
Will do. Take care.
Awesome. So from all of us at Fight Mixer, from myself and Mr. Gabe, and also remember, visit Kajuja MMA and Fitness if you want to train with five-time world champion, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt.
I mean, I'll be there at 6 a.m. tomorrow. I'll be there at 6 a.m. So it's ooh, look at that. Beautiful.
Yep.
All right.
Tarzana, California. If you want to sign up for classes, be sure to contact this guy. First trial class is for free. Go to kajuja/MMA.com to sign up for your first class, or give him a call at 818. Oh my God. There you go. 818-231-1119. And tell them that the Fight Mixer sent you. Free trial class for your first class with five-time world champion Godzilla, Mr. Gabe.
And don't forget Dranger.
Dranger Nutrition. If you want some of the best supplements on the planet and you want to be as badass as Dan the Beast Severn or Mr. Gabe, go on DrangerNutrition.com and buy some supplements from Dranger Nutrition, DrangerNutrition.com. Awesome stuff.
Dranger sums it up.
Pretty much. Wrap it up like a Christmas present. Thank you very much for joining us for the Fight Mixer. We will see you Thursday evening. Thank you very much, Dan the Beast Severn, MMA legend, pro wrestling legend, UFC Hall of Famer. I've been waiting to talk to this guy forever, and he's lived up to my every expectation. And our show, I hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you very much, everybody, from the Fight Mixer. We'll see you Thursday.
Peace. All around good guy.
The man himself, he's back. With myself and Dan the Beast Severn, signing off from the Fight Mixer. Have a good night, guys.
Take care.
Perfect.